Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and we're going to do another one of the Pflueger reels that Scott sent in. Sort of like a Lay's potato chip ad, you just can't do one, right? This one is the Pflueger 2048 Sea Vue. It's got a lot of the features of some of the other Pflueger reels, like the handle. If you have a Pflueger Capital, which is the reel that has the single screw take-apart system, very much has the same kind of handle. This one has a thumb adjuster. It's called a thumber, a mechanical thumber, which is going to set the tension on your spool. I'm kind of curious. I'll look inside that, see what's going on there as we do the service. But you can learn a lot from doing the old reels in addition to doing the new ones. And it's always nice to go inside, see what the mechanicals are, how the reel comes together. And of course, if you have one of these, you want to keep it working. And that's the service aspect of it. Take it apart, clean it, service it, and get it out there running again. This one seems to run a little tight, but not terribly. And that may be a function of this thumber here. We'll have to figure out a little bit more about it, and we'll see. I think the thumber is much more just a spool adjuster than anything, but we'll take a look and see. Well, we're going to take the exterior pieces off. That's the handle and nut cap and the like, and as we do, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel. If you do subscribe to my channel, please hit that notification button. That'll tell you when I'm posting videos, and well, you can take a look at that, see if that's something you want to see or not. Well, the cap nut I like. It comes on a couple of different types of reels. And spinning reels, there's a cap nut on some rotors, which I love. You can't over tighten the cap. That's always a good thing. This is a square mounted handle. And you always want to check your handles on these older reels. Sometimes they've been worn down and they've elongated or kind of lost their grip, and then they start stripping things, or they just don't grab the reel good enough. So just always check, make sure it's nice and square there. Looks like we have a screw that's going to hold the gear post on. Before I go much further, and while I have the anti-reverse still there, I'm going to just try and break that screw, because it's a lot easier doing it that way than it is when you have all the pieces apart and find out that that one's stuck. All right, we're going to take this off now. This is the star adjuster, which is going to control the drag. This has got a feature like a lot of pen reels. It's an indented star adjuster. This shows up on some of the pen reels. It's designed to keep the water out. And you can see there's some debris that's collected inside the collar here. And the idea is to shield the outside of the adjuster stack and close it up as best you can with this. This is interesting. It's noted a B, and like the old vinyl records, I guess it tells you that's the B side. We'll laugh about it, but there are times when reels come in with this inverted, and it has that the dugout outside, flat side in, and then they can't understand why they don't have a drag system. The drag system is, you need that indentation here to contact with that gear sleeve to adjust the drags. I just used some chrome polish. This is Turtle Wax chrome polish. It's an automotive chrome polish. Use a metal polish, use something, but clean up the metal parts as best you can. I use that and a little bit of a steel 4.0 buffing pad to do that. I neglected to mention this is a 1950s reel, I think, maybe early 60s, and they still use the US-based wrenches, so that's a 9/16 wrench on that cap wrench. It always is a good idea, if you can, just to wet down the screw heads on these old reels, just because sometimes these older reels get stuck, and if they get stuck, well, you don't want to snap that screw off. Well, we just noticed a couple of things going on here. We have a spacer washer, and we have the gear sleeve that just fell out from the inside of the stack here. Always good to take pictures along the way. If you do, well, you'll know where they came from when they fall out or otherwise. And here's an example of what we were just talking about here. The screw is kind of sticking in that piece. What I like to do if I have a spinning screw is to grab the crossbar with the pliers, but don't apply the pliers directly. You can scrape or scar it. Use something like this, a kitchen scrubby or electrical tape or something to hold that bar while you unlock the screw. If you feel a lot of resistance after you turn it once or twice, go back in and hit that with the penetrating oil again to help lubricate that up. As you can imagine, it's an old reel. I imagine it hasn't been serviced in quite some time. And well, that's just going to cause the dirt and debris that was in those threads, well, to kind of hang and kind of tighten down. I'll go for a little bit wider piece. What I'm doing here, this one's butterflied, and that's the result of somebody not using the right screwdriver tip. So you got wings on the side there. It makes it a little bit tough to extract it, but we're okay. I'm laying these screws down on the table to make sure they're all the same size. Now I just did the 1878 reel from Pflueger that Scott gave me, and that one, all the screws were the same size, and quite honestly the frame looked the same. Well, to some extent. It had the single riveted reel seat there on the two posts. It did have 3 other pillars on it. It had a 5-pillar. One of them was up top, so maybe it didn't look all much the same, but the screws looked the same. And I guess if you needed a screw and you had a parts reel, the parts from that 1878 reel probably would fit. Everything else about the reel is different. This is a star adjuster reel. The other one was a direct drive, and so on. Well, there's one more to take out. You can see that they all have some semblance of shellacking from the old creases. So what I'm going to do after I notice that all of these are the same, I'm just going to hit them with a little bit of penetrating oil to help loosen that shellac. Just like that. And then they're going into my parts tray. Well, that's where the first pieces disappeared. I use a piece of a fast food container to do that. But whatever your organization is, please do a couple of things. Take note of how they come off, the sequences. Maybe you need a schematic for it. Maybe you'd like to lay them out in front of you. A lot of folks use the machinist system of laying it out in the sequence that they took the pieces off. Whatever it is that you're using, just make sure you have a system, because if you don't, it's easy to get lost with the pieces and parts, and well, then you have a problem, not a system. All right, we've taken off the side plate screws. We can remove the side plate. Kind of an interesting design here, and we'll get underneath that in a moment. It has 4 bridge screws. Here's your slot or your pinion gear for the back end of the spool, which is square. And we'll get underneath that, and well, we'll see how we can do with that. I'm going to remove the spool first because I'm curious. Well, I'm not seeing anything at all on that thumber. So my thinking on the thumber is that it's simply a spool adjuster. And let's see. I think this can probably just screw right out. I hate to lose this piece and try and find it. Okay, so that's kind of what we have here. We have a little eared washer, and we have a drive under here, and it's all coming apart, unfortunately. It looks like this was put in backwards. That wouldn't surprise me. But you have a little cog here, and that cog is going to represent the tension on it. And we have a washer. We have an eared washer, and that ear washer was out of the slot there, so I'm not sure how effective that was when we took it off. The eared washer goes in like that, kind of like a mini drag on a spin fishing reel. And then we have what kind of looks like a 3-pronged spring attached to the back of this. It's probably crimped on here, and that's going to provide the varying tension against that support system there. Well, there's your thumber. Interesting, unique little feature there. We're going to go ahead and clean this now. And there's a couple of different products you can use. I'm going to use a scrubby pad and a rod and reel cleaner here. I use Penn's rod and reel cleaner. And we'll just try and clean up or buff up the chrome on this one. It's well worn. It's just it's not badly worn, it's just worn, and that's an evidence that the reel's been used, and that's fine. Well, if you have any questions on this reel or any reel in particular, maybe you're working on one and you're stuck, maybe you have a question about when a reel was made, maybe you're wondering who made it and what the history is of the company, those kinds of things. If you leave that in the comment section, I do try to answer the questions and try to help you out if you're stuck and get you some more information if you have a reel that you like and maybe want to know some more about. All right, well, that's kind of taking the superficial stuff off the side here. Notice your click spring mechanism here. You got a nice point on the click tongue here, so that should make a nice loud click. You can move it in and out, make sure that it works, and this one does. And you can put a drop of oil on that as well. That's all you need to do on that side. And of course we have the back side of the spool here. We have a little dirt on this spool, so we're going to do the same thing on both sides here. I'm going to use that penetrating oil, and then we'll start with a cloth. If the cloth doesn't get some of the old stuff off, you can move on to some more abrasive things like that scrubby pad or the 4-0 steel wool, but I wouldn't recommend going any further than the 4-0 steel wool to clean up. All right, and then the rest of this spool is clean. This is that little point where you're going to merge that with that piece that we saw there in the front end. There you go, that merged in nicely. And that's your spool, the non-gear side surface. Looks like we have to take the free spool arm off here. This is where pictures are going to be helpful. But I'm looking at the way that that release goes and jumping into new territory here, but I'm thinking that that free spool release is a stud that's holding this square on. And this is a good place to take pictures, because if you mess it up, at least you know what it looked like before you got a little bit aggressive there. Also notice that your screws come through the bridge pretty much, so don't think, well, I did something wrong here because those screws seem too long. Well, they seem to be the way that it was designed. I'm going to take the cap nut off. We get a nice cap nut there. I'm not sure if I can push this out now or if that unscrews. It looks like there's another unscrew here, so well, I can push that out. I think the question is going to be, can I push it out enough? I'm not quite sure if this is an oil port or something more than that, so let's go ahead and move that out and see what we got. I love the engineering on these old reels. You learn so much about what these folks did from a design standpoint. You can probably use a smaller bladed screwdriver here. That's just grabbing now. So we have a small screw, then we have a push spring that fits in that cavity. So I pull that out, and then I think we can push the other part through. There you go. Oh, we lost the one piece there. But that's what I was trying to get out so that we can lift this gate up and do the cleaning. All right, we know how this goes then. It's going to go inside. There's going to be a spring sitting in the cavity. There's going to be the screw that goes on top of that cavity. That's the top part. This piece just fell out. If you don't remember your pictures, well, you're in trouble there, right? Which side was it? Was it the side with the circles, or was it the side with the 3 points that was facing out? I'll give you time to go rewind the video. I know what it was. But that's a good reason to take the pictures. I'm not going to pull this out, but I think you probably could. It looks like it's just pinned in under the bridge here. But I am going to use the cotton swab to get that old grease out of there. Because so much of your reel service, and I recommend an annual reel service, but so much of your reel service is that. It's cleaning up the old grease, it's checking for worn pieces and parts, and it's just going back and re-lubing when you've completed that. Here's our 4 bridge screws. That'll be next. Let's go ahead and take that out. This might pop out just kind of as a warning. I'm going to take that piece and put it back in there. I'm going to take the arm, put that in the tray. I'm going to take the cap nut and put that in the tray. And the reason for that is I know where they are when I go to reinstall. Again, you may have a different approach. That's fine. This fast food container has got 8 corners in it. So to me, it's nice because I can take the sub-assemblies and I can put them in each corner. That suits me well. All right, I'm going to lay the screws out on the table just like I did with the exterior post screws because, well, they might be a different size. And if they're a different size, I want to note which ones go high and low. And of course, there's a chance that they could be the same. In this case, they're not. So we're going to take that out. I'm holding the bridge on the back here so that it doesn't come off because I want to look at how the piece comes together. Just like we did on the other one, it's got some old grease dried on the threads. So let's go ahead and put the penetrating oil on those and then find another corner of my parts tray for that piece now. All right, well, our eccentric came out. That's fine. And, well, and that we can see the answers to everything. So we'll wind up taking the whole thing off. That little adjuster there is pinned in like I thought. And then we can come in with the back of this to kind of help us along there. Here's your anti-reverse. This is a good place to take a picture of that. You have a spring mounted on a post wrapped around another post and holding the shoulder of the anti-reverse dog. We're going to take our main gear off. And we should be able to unpin this one like we unpinned the other. So let's go ahead and do that because we want to clean up the post underneath. This was the one I was saying, if you take that off while you have everything assembled, you're in better condition because of the leverage you have on the outside of the reel. I'm going to hold this anti-reverse dog now as I remove the shaft. I don't really want to knock that off if I can avoid it. Just clean it up. Cleans up nicely. Get all the old dirt out of there. Grab a paper towel again. Clean off the shaft. If you found it was really old grease in that, go ahead and use like a 4.0 steel wool to buff that pad. And now we're going to start kind of the lubrication part of this process. We're going to use fishing reel grease. I'm using Penn Precision Reel Grease here. Just a light coating on it here. You don't want too much on. And go ahead and take that shaft, put that right back on. And then if you've kind of lost your strength on the anti-reverse dog, make sure that you seat it properly before you continue. I'm going to get that seated by hand first. That way I know that I won't cross thread it. Then we can tighten this up. And we'll take a look at that main gear there. This is a star drag reel. As such, you probably have leather washers in here from back in the day. We do. And surprisingly, they're flexible. So there's nothing wrong with these. You can go ahead and reuse these. If you needed to replace them, that looks like it could be replaced with a Penn washer. You're not going to find washers today for this reel, but that looks like a Penn 155 washer would probably be a good substitute for that. Well, leather washers are breathable and they're porous. So what you want to do with a leather washer is you want to put some grease on there. I use a gloved hand as a tool, and you want to wipe that grease in there to keep it fresh. Before we reassemble the main gear, check the teeth on it. Make sure that they're all uniform, that they're not chipped or cracked. If they are, you probably have to replace it, and on a reel of this age, it'd probably be difficult finding a replacement. I'm going to use a hard brush. You can use a metal one. You can use a toothbrush. You can use your dollar store variety hard brush pack. And get real fancy with the brushes that Scott sent in. They're an Ace Hardware brand, but it's the same idea. Hard brush, brass brush, and metal iron brush, steel brush. And we'll get to use them soon because my other brushes are starting to wear down here. But go ahead and clean that up. Notice you got a washer on the back here, which is going to sit and hold the anti-reverse from flipping around too much. I'm going to take that main gear then, and we're going to grease it up nicely. You don't have to get grease in every tooth on the main gear. That pinion gear is a smaller gear, and it will spread it around. Main gear goes on, and then we had that first one that we just greased up there. This is a 6 drag system, so you're going to have 2 keyed washers that are round and one that's called the eared washer, which has got points on the outside of it. The keyed washers go high and low in the drag stack. Here's the second of the leather washers. We're going to do the same thing, kind of rinse and repeat. Get some grease on there, rub that grease in to keep it fresh. Don't put too much on, you're only going to squeeze it out because that the star adjuster does compress these to kind of hold them. The keyed washer, when you compress, is holding the shaft. The one that we just put in, the eared washer, holds the main gear with those 2 tags, and when you compress them all, you're holding both, and that's what gives you the adjustability in the drag. All right, that's your last of the leather washers that's just been lubed up. And then this can go on. All right, if you were paying attention, you probably put the gear sleeve on. I want to make sure that you've tightened down that screw there. I think I did, but now's a good time to check. I wouldn't put this on yet, but you can put that gear sleeve on before mounting. All right, there's a pinion gear. That's the small gear that's going to transition the power of the main gear to drive the spool. That's going to face this way. Remember what we did, we had a cap here, right? This is going to be on the spool. You can actually go put that on the spool if you wanted to. It's going to be this way, right? And then this is going to intersect with that. You can see the 3 tabs. They're going to fit in like this. In between the spacer. They're going to seat like this. And that's going to enable you to drive the gear. And free spool, when it's in free spool, it's going to separate them so that it doesn't allow, so that it allows the spool to turn without turning that other gear. All right, let's grease this up. Same thing, inspect the teeth. These are straight, no chips, cracks, and they're also dry, no dirt. That's what you want. All right, let's clean one more piece here. Got one more piece will be the inside of the case here, and I'm going to use the penetrating oil just to kind of help me dissolve some of the old greases. There's one thing that you can say, there's a lot of things you can say about the Pflueger reels. The Pflueger reels are still around today. They're certainly not made in Akron, Ohio by the Pflueger company anymore, but they are part of Pure Fishing. And they kind of were acquired by Shakespeare in the late 50s. I remember 1957, I think. There's a lot of mergers that went on in that time frame. You had Langley acquired by Zebco. You had Ocean City acquired by True Temper. And you had Pflueger acquired by Shakespeare. All right, this is going to come in from the back side. Remember that. The other way. Going to go out. And we have our gear. And we have our flip. Just trying to align those pins. There we go. Now I'm looking for my little assembly, which has the 3 pieces here. I'm going to hold that. You can see where the spring goes next. And then we have that small screw, which is going to hold that assembly into place. Again, start it by hand if you can. Just be careful with these. Again, just, well, err on the side of age, right? And caution. And that kind of looks like the way we had it. The pin is not in the back here, so we need to load that pin into that groove. Guess we must have just knocked that out a little bit. That's all right. Shouldn't be too hard to reset that. And then we can take the rebuilt assembly now. We got two things going here. One of them is that little carrier. So let's see if we can't raise the carrier. We had some grease to help that slide along there. And actually put a little bit of grease into this slot here. Raise that up, bring that in. And we can lock that in if we like. I think I got it locked there. Okay. Now let's take the main gear assembly and slide that in next. Well, I guess it wasn't a good idea to put that back end in. Before I do anything, I'm going to turn it, make sure everything is turning properly. And we're going to go to the corner of my basket here that has the 4 screws. And then we have 2 long, 2 short. And we're going to put the long ones in first because that seems to be where all the weight is on this one. And then we'll come back in and put the 2 short ones in up top. Just want to relieve the grip here. Doesn't seem to be catching, so turn it around, eyeball the alignment. There we go. I feel that coming through now. And we want to make sure that we can set this properly too. Short one goes up top. Then you can kind of do northeast, southwest. We can go back below to the long one. And then we can come back to the short one. So far what we've done is we've done a complete disassembly of the reel, including that little thumber in the back there. And that's enabled us to inspect all the pieces and parts, do a thorough cleaning on them, refresh the greases, including the drag washers. We mentioned that you might be able to get away with a pen drag washer if the other one is worn. And now we're just going to try and grab this. Want to set it properly. Go back for that cap nut. Love the cap nuts. Again, you can't over tighten the cap nut. Let's go ahead and put this on. This one, I think by US standards, is a 7/16. I think that's the one I just used there. It is. Then come back to this side. Make sure that that mechanism is pulling in and out. I'm just checking to make sure that my clearances are right. And that seems to be working fine. May have to go back and tighten that one up. I'm not sure. It just doesn't seem like it has a lot of throw, but then again, a lot of throw may not be needed. So I'll just come in here with that mini, see if there's any more. Oh, we're tight there. All right, that's the way it's going to be. So we'll make sure when we're testing it that it's working properly. What I'm looking at when I'm doing this is I'm looking at the throw in the back here. That when you pull this, you'll notice that this does move. And it's a question of it moving enough. All right, just kind of lining that up. Next step then would be to grease the shaft here. That square part, remember that square part is where the outer part of this is going to sit. And I noticed I didn't Didn't do my cleaning here, so let's just do a little bit of that. Get some of that old grease hanging off the side here. Wipe that down with your cloth. I prefer paper towels. They're disposable, and you don't transfer the greases and junk to your next project as you might on a cloth towel. All right, we're holding that now. All of these are the same size, so this is just a matter of finding one, setting it, going to the next one. Now this one was spinning, so it doesn't hurt to put a drop of oil on the threads there to facilitate it on the re-entry. All the others went in pretty easily. This one's going in pretty easily now too. The pressure of my finger is holding that post. So we do know that we've pretty much tightened that down the way we should. There we go. Now we're coming over to the other side now. And I'm going to grab another one of these. And I think I put the wrong one in. How do you like that? Oops. Somebody said they enjoy my oops moments. That's an oops moment. The two long ones, there are just a little bit of a difference, but just enough. The two long ones belong down below into those main wheel bars. Our last one was just a little bit tough, going in that last 1/8 of an inch or something. We'll get that out in a moment. These are just a little bit shorter. It's maybe an 1/8 or a quarter. It's hard to even notice the difference, but it seems to be just enough. And I guess if you're not paying attention, well, that's what happens. All right, we'll tighten this one down. We'll come back, tighten the one in the wheel seat down. And we'll come over and put one next to the one that's got the spinning post, and then we'll take the spinning post out. Sometimes you'll find these older reels have short attachments to these crossbars, and I guess that would leave more stress on the bar itself. These are actually probably going in 1/2 inch, which to me makes all the sense in the world in terms of strengthening that crossbar assembly. All right, let's see if we can take this one out now. Well, I think we need to back that one out. Maybe that's what happened the last time. Somebody put it in the wrong one. And use that pad again to hold the cross post as we back this one out. There we go. I'm just curious, I just want to lay the two next to each other. Yeah, just about an 1/8 of an inch difference. Not much, but just enough. And that was it. The last two turns on this one seemed to be a little harder. That's okay. We already have the oil in that hole from the last one, so let's go ahead and just put that on. And we got two more, and then we can kind of give it a test here, see how we're doing. Okay, just finishing tightening this last one, then skipped ahead a little bit on the video here. You didn't need to see me tighten all these screws down. Let me put the last pieces on. Remember the gear sleeve that fell out? That goes next. You had this little kind of lock washer there. And we have our star adjuster. Do this by hand as well. You want to make sure that you don't cross strip it as you're putting it on. These are real easy to cross strip. Make sure that it goes in nice and square with the same distance to each side plate from the stars. If you cross strip it, you're going to have trouble finding a replacement gear shaft, so please take your time with that one. Tighten that down first before you tighten your cap nut down. If you didn't take that gear sleeve off, you could remove that screw from the gear sleeve and put oil in there. This has an oil hole in it, but I'm not sure what that would do. And let's give it a little ride. All right, first up, let's spin the spool. Spins nice and easily. Engage the gear. Look at that. How many years? This reel's got to be 50, 60 years old. Working like a champ. Scott, you can take this one fishing tomorrow on those deep sea excursions you got. Go get yourself some Dorado. And it's a beautiful little reel all around. Well, I hope you've enjoyed that. This is the Pflueger 2048 Sea Vue, made in the U.S. Chances are it was made in Akron, Ohio, which is where Pflueger was headquartered. And chances are it was made in the 1960s, 50s, or 60s. Beautiful reel all around. To our first responders and essential personnel, thank you for everything it is that you do to keep us safe. To everyone, have a great holiday season. Yep, we're in the winter again. Enjoy your fishing excursions, with friends and family, and have a great day. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle.